Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think, Jamil Zainasheff and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters. I'm Jamil Zainasheff.
I'm Travis Campbell.
And I'm Mike Persine, and you're listening to Brew Strong.
I like how you say it with passion.
Yes.
I try to get it like, the announcer guy.
Oh, yeah. I miss the announcer guy. The
like the Lance Armstrong of brewing, except for that nut thing.
That thing.
Probably with the nut thing, who knows?
By now.
I believe that was my idea, the nut thing.
I believe.
You know me. I miss those days in the garage and then in the Double D and everywhere else. It was a wonderful time. Now we're in the gray nothingness behind me.
It's like an Interstellar when you're like in between everything.
Yes. There's just a giant pile of crap behind me. So this morning we threw up the curtain of doom to make sure I don't know that we're hiding everything. I don't know.
Are you in your home office, and that's a new addition to your home office?
Yes, the curtain of doom. I'm in exactly the same place as I was before.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you did.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
It is what it is.
But you're hiding out behind like a high school auditorium's little stage or something like that.
Right.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
I need something behind here. I don't know. Look at your back.
I'll send you my Bobby Bear.
Oh, we could have Bobby. Yes. All right.
You can't have Bobby Bear, but anyway.
Sorry, that was quite the ahem.
I've had lots of Moxa beer, so these are
can't go wrong there.
These are doing me in. I'm having the in-flight, and it's got me flying. It's 7.3, very delicious Moxa beers. So I love them.
Highly recommend.
Almost as much as I love my good buddy John Blickman, Blickman Engineering. You check him out. He has been paying for the show, so you don't have to, for the last 16 years or so. One of these days, I'm going to calculate how much it is and actually know how long it's been. But it's about 16 years. And in those 16 years, he has created an amazing array of cool stuff. Just innovating your brew day, as Jason Petros would say. That's what Blickman Engineering has been doing. And some of the most recent stuff, fermenter for commercial breweries, a 3.5 barrel fermenter that wheels through a 36-inch doorway, slides right through, tucks up tight against the wall. The fittings are in the front. Brew kettle for commercial brewers that does not have all those electrical elements sticking inside of it that you have to wait until you've filled past that point. You don't have to worry about clunking into it with your mash paddle when you're trying to stir your wort. Instead, it has heating elements bonded to the bottom of the kettle so that you've got a clear, clean kettle that's easy to clean. The minute you get a little bit of wort on the bottom, you can start the boil. You can step mash in these things. Very clever. That's what Blickman Engineering is, innovating your brew day. Great people too. Really love them. If you get a chance, ask for Blickman Engineering wherever you go. the least you should do is look at it and check it out. You can check it out on their website. You check it out at your local homebrew shop. Check it out if you're getting into commercial brewing. Yeah, give them a shot. And at the very least, you could do for me is, send a nice email to John Blickman at feedback@blickmanengineering.com. If you appreciate that this show's been on for 16 years because he's been paying for it, I think you ought to send in an email. Because who knows? Maybe they're going to be like, nah, I can't really afford this anymore. It's a load of crap and nobody really listens. If you listen, send them an email. I'd appreciate it. There you go.
I don't even know if I know anyone who doesn't have something Blickman. And John continues to pay for the show, even though everybody knows who he is and what he has, or except for the new stuff. It's outstanding.
He's a very loyal person. And, he believes in the community and he supports the community and he supports us because, I don't know.
One thing
he's loyal. He's a loyal friend.
Yeah. One thing I can say is that as an engineer, I really appreciate the elegance of his solutions.
Mm-hmm.
They're not overly complicated.
Absolutely.
There's not 8,000 nuts and bolts and computer programs and things you have to install. And half the time it doesn't work. He gets this real easy little contraption that just does exactly what you want.
He's a brilliant engineer.
Yeah.
He was an engineer at Caterpillar.
Yeah.
Which makes some pretty freaking amazing stuff. And so the homebrew world is lucky to have, and then the pro brewer world too. So if you're looking at equipment, just check out some Blickman Engineering. All right, so this is live Q&A, and Richard in the comments section. If you're watching live on Facebook, and I post this on social media when we're going live, and generally it's been Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. You can click on the comment section and you can comment on whatever, and you can ask a question. So Richard was asking, hey, fellas, just stepped in. So sorry if this is off topic. My brew club is giving a presentation on basic beer ingredients, and they gave the high history teacher water. So I'm guessing he is the high history teacher.
Yeah, it's a half-baked thing going on, maybe.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking, right?
He's asking any advice. I mean, I just got this now. I read it like 3 times. I just got any advice on what should be the most basic but most important thing for people to know about brewing water?
I mean, most important thing to know about water. There's so much to learn, and there's entire books to read by John Palmer. But the most important thing to know about water is, yes, it makes up the most of your beer, but what I've always heard from these two guys, Jamil and John, is water is kind of like the seasoning. If you make a good steak, the seasoning can help it. If you make a bad steak, no amount of seasoning is going to save it. So think about it in terms of your water profile, pH. All these things are definitely important, but they're more of a than the core. Minimal
adjustment. Yeah, that's wise. All right, Travis?
So if we're talking basic, and the easiest thing I can tell someone who's about to brew some beer, water, here in Houston, our water, chlorine, chloramines, etc. I'm going to tell them get some spring water. Work on your water later. Just start with some spring water right now, which is, who knows if it's really spring water, but at least it's not full of chlorine, chloramine. That's a basic thing for me. Just use that. Don't worry about the rest yet. Make your beer with that. Don't try to filter your tap water. Don't try to fix your tap water. Don't buy an RO system like I have. I'm sure Mike has and Jamil has.
No RO for me. I go with tap. Filtered tap.
But we do. I
do chlorine out. Nothing else.
I get Tahoe water up here, baby.
Is that good or bad?
Like Tahoe? It's some of the best water in the world.
Oh, nice.
It was the greatest water that I was ever.
Yeah, that's believable.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys. I think you make excellent points. I would tell people, don't overthink water. Don't. The tap water you have is probably fine once you've removed the chlorine and the chloramines. You got to get rid of that stuff. But once you have, it's probably fine for making beer. People made beer all over the world without, RO systems. All of a sudden, everybody's got to have an RO system. Everybody needs to be. It's like, no. The problem with RO based water is that the mineral additions you're going to do are not, they don't seem natural a lot of the time. It's too one way or the other. It's missing something. It's missing all those subtleties that are in the natural, water that's produced.
Yeah. And that's why I like Travis's. And actually I can speak to, I did that when I first started, was I'd go buy the big gallon jugs of spring water to make beer with, because I didn't have the experience or the know-how or the understanding of my municipal water or an RO system to make, anyways.
So Richard, I would tell people, don't worry too much about water.
Go like this.
Remove the chlorine and chloramines, or buy the water that's no chloramines or chlorine, and then season it. Whatever type of beer you're brewing. If you're brewing a dark beer, or you're brewing like you might need more pH buffering. If you're brewing a hazy or something like that, you might need to add a little table salt to sweeten it up. If you're brewing an IPA, West Coast type IPA, well, then maybe you need a little bit of gypsum to enhance the bittering there. And so that would be the thing. Those would be the basic three. I mean, what else?
I'd be curious to know what region he's in when he's talking about water,
right?
Because like out west, I would say we're pretty fortunate. At least me getting kind of a mountain alpine water, and
Mountain
I know
Dew.
back in Texas, you probably got some pretty hard water. So RO kind of becomes more of a necessity than an option. And so
it's more the treatment they do than what shows up. Honestly, it's the chlorine and chloramines.
Well, yeah, and that's too. How are they disinfecting your water? Are they using chloramines? Are they using bleach, sodium hypochlorite, which is what we have up here? So I don't have a chloramine necessarily. It kind of, see how you kind of get in the weeds, and then you're not doing the most important thing. I'm trying to read his question. So yeah, that's where I would think if you're really an introductory course would be spring water from a trusted source, and without getting too in the weeds.
He's in Stockton. So in Stockton, you're fine. I mean, I brewed in Elk Grove. It's going to vary depending on where they how they're blending the water at your local municipality. But I brewed in Elk Grove. People are like, Elk Grove. A lot of people are on RO and things like that. It's like, no, it's fine. You just make these other little adjustments. It's more important, to ferment properly, to sanitation, things like that. Once you do, then you're good. A little seasoning, like Michael's saying. For certain beers, and you should be fine.
Yeah. And I would say in California, I would doubt they're using chloramine as a disinfection process out there, or they're chlorinating water sources with enough ammonia to produce chloramines. So I would think you're probably good on that front. And then, so just running the water through a charcoal filter, or what I do when I fill my liquor tank, this guy, I just splash real hard right in the middle, and I'm trying to push off as much of that as I can. I do it the night before.
And most of the water districts are using chloramines because they're more stable. They use far less of them.
It's cheaper.
Yeah. Mike Shoemaker brings up an excellent point. Water depends on the time of year too. Absolutely. One of the things that happens in a lot of water districts is the source of their water changes. So some water districts, they've got one source. it's a lake or, a reservoir or a river or the ground, and that's it. Some have 3 sources. They'll have, a river, a reservoir, groundwater, all that stuff, and they will blend those, and they'll blend them based on the time of year. So it's raining more and one thing's filling up, or, the spring snow melt comes. So the rivers are flowing high. So that's where they're drawing more of their water and they're getting more of the spring snow melt. Or, it's summer, the river's low. They're depending more on the groundwater. And so it's going to change what your mix is. They try and keep it as consistent as they can. They're trying to hit some targets, but it's going to vary. It's one of the reasons I tended to only brew during the winter, or as much as I could, I brewed during the winter. Let's do this. Short break. When we come back, more of your questions right after this.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on 2 gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at BlickmanEngineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew strong.
All right, we're back. We're taking your questions live, and we're also taking your questions over email. If you've been listening to the show, you know that you can send in questions to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. And we actually get to them pretty quick now. There's maybe 300 from, the last 2 decades that we haven't quite got to yet. But I'm on top of the new ones now. This one came in Tuesday, September 5th of 2023. That is not even a week ago? Huh? How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? David asks, hi, I'm really interested in the dry hop recirculation that you mentioned a couple of times in recent episodes. You've mentioned a peristaltic pump as the best pump to use in this case, but do you think a diaphragm pump like the Blickman Quick Carb uses would be good or at least decent alternative? Kurt. It says David, but then it says Kurt. So maybe David goes by Kurt.
Maybe so. Who's the judge?
David or Kurt is to judge.
That's true. That's true.
Whatever you prefer, brother. I'm guessing he prefers Kurt. All right, Kurt. It's a good question. What do you guys think?
I would say from my experiences in pumps, because I'm a water and wastewater engineer, diaphragm.
A lot of pumping?
Yeah, a little pump and dump, Oh. But no, it's they're very similar. I wouldn't think there'd be too much of a problem unless there's, if they're using it for a quick carb. I would think it'd be fine as long as you're not clogging. Like if your inlet outlet is too small, But I would think that'd be great. It's just going to pulse a little harder than a peristaltic, but I don't see a lot of difference there. The positive displacement pumps are going to be good for this.
Well, and one of the things is, the hop matter. You don't want it to, block up a pump they can't handle, material going through it. So impeller type pumps generally kind of struggle. In commercial brewing, the pumps are pretty beefy a lot of times, and they will just chop through most hop leaf matter, and it won't be a problem. So that's why you don't generally use impeller pumps in homebrew for that sort of thing. Diaphragm pumps, yeah. I mean, the only issue I'd worry about is any sort of oxygen ingress into that sort of thing. I'm not sure how the diaphragm pumps occlude oxygen or not. The peristaltic pumps, they could let zero oxygen in or a ton of oxygen in. If they're using silicone tubing, that will just let in a huge amount of oxygen unless it's platinum lined. And even the platinum lined, I've gotten bad platinum lined silicone tubing before. So that would be my
fresh
only
piece
concern.
of vinyl.
Snap yourself off a fresh piece. Yeah.
There you go. So
Vinyl tubing, it lets in far less oxygen than silicone. It is not as pliable as the silicone, which for peristaltic pumps, they tend to go with something along those lines. So peristaltic could be bad too. Just depends on what kind of tubing is being used in that pump. So
yeah, and he just said, I've never used my pump on the cold side, only for recirc during mashing and sparging. That's probably like if he has like a Blickman Riptide or a Spike pump or a March, those are all centrifugal impellers type pumps, which you probably want to avoid during a dry hop recirculation, because you're going to end up with almost a slurry of hop matter and beer, and you need to be able to pass that through the pump. And I think a diaphragm would be good, especially a high quality one. Yeah. But watch out for what that diaphragm's made out of. Like Jamil just said, you don't want to get one with a silicone diaphragm that's going to just leak oxygen all over your beer. So,
I like the peristaltic for cleanliness, but you do need a very flexible tubing, so you're probably going to end up with silicone, so you're going to oxygenate it. But I mean, the fact that you could have a piece of tubing and the pump is entirely external, the tubing, I like the concept of the peristaltic. And the parts inside of a diaphragm not getting hop matter depending on where you're pulling. I mean, if you're pulling high enough above your hops, or somehow you're not pulling hops in,
you want to get those hops, stirring through.
But eventually they're going to be stirring through. Yeah, but so if you're pulling hops through it, that's going to be an impressive diaphragm pump. And I don't know if specifically the quick cart pump is big enough to pass hop matter. It's a pretty small.
I'd be worried about how small. Yeah, you got to get a pretty big one.
So,
because I know in wastewater they'll use diaphragm pumps for sludge and all these gross things that have a lot of solids. So they do work.
He means,
but like you said, you got to size it right. The turds,
the turds and the tampons.
We always have a joke.
There's
in
a pre-screen for that, but anyway,
yeah, we have a joke in wastewater. Your number 2 is our number 1.
Yes.
I heard your shit is our bread and butter one. I hadn't heard
that's a good one too. Yeah,
one.
I think we've all been drinking too much. I think. All right, so Kurt, there's your answer. You might give it a try. See what happens. If it binds up, it binds up. Then you can disconnect it and kind of skip that idea. But there you go.
And don't dump that back in. Go ahead and dump that out. Restart.
Yeah, there you go.
I would just also it's half inch or better, half inch or bigger.
All right, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're talking your live Q&A. Tons of great questions. If you're listening live, you can just click on that comment button and The thing is, the weird thing is, all right. So I'm old, and I don't really understand a lot of your kids' modern technology. Although I helped develop a lot of this modern technology back in my day. In the chat says, send 200 stars to see your comment here.
Yeah, I've never done that. I think you have to pay for that, by the way.
You have to pay for that?
Now, the thing is, hey, everybody should know that goes straight to the bottom line of the Brewing Network.
It's like an OnlyFans thing, but it's an only Facebook thing.
So do we need to get
I think
Justin on here to strip down and get some stars going, or what?
Well, I think the reason is they're concerned about just like spam and all that stuff, and people just blast with nonsense.
They'll stick around. If you do the stars, they stick around. Yeah, I never do the stars.
Oh,
I know you pay for them, but it lifts them up. Woo, stars, And
it pins it probably where we can see it the whole time.
Yeah. Because we can't scroll through the 20 people who posted here today. If you use the stars, we'll definitely see your message, and Justin will appreciate it. So go ahead and send those stars over.
Yeah, I don't really want people to, to have to pay, but
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Blickman's paying for you. You're good.
Yeah. I'll have to ask Justin about that. What the hell's going on with that? Because I don't know.
You might be able to turn it off.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
Right. I wonder if
it's people going.
I wonder if it's costing people stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I looked at it once and I said, I'm not paying for that crap. It wasn't for you, Jamil. I'd pay for you. It was something entirely different.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, you have to get stars. Oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah, you have to buy them.
Oh, my God, 235 stars. So 200 would be $2.99. $3 to ask a question.
Right?
Can we petition them to change it from stars to Zuckbucks?
Ow.
Bam. Done.
Damn.
Now, so honestly, I'd wonder if Justin can turn it off so nobody can even do that stuff.
Right. If we can, or at least on this show.
But when I looked at it, it was diminishing returns. The more stars you bought, the more it cost, not linearly.
Really?
Do whatever you did. I'm not going to do it because Facebook probably hacked my credit card and charged me for some stars.
I just clicked on that send 200 stars to see your comment here. Well, that sucks.
All right, so 50 costs. Doesn't tell me how much 50 costs. But it doesn't tell you how much it costs.
235, it told me it was $2.99. $3 to ask a question or to comment?
Right, so let's see what 50 costs. 50 stars costs $1.
Well, okay, so here's the thing.
Okay, yeah, it does get better, not worse.
Zuckerberg is getting like 99% of that money. And
0.999. It's probably 5 nines. Yeah.
Everybody listening, we're scrolling the comment section. We will see it. You don't have to pay.
And if we don't see it, it's probably because we ignored it.
Oof. No, we see them all.
I wasn't going to.
But I think just to post at all.
Yeah, no, we see every. No. You can post. But if you send stars, you see where it says "see your comment."
It's a different bar.
It will be pinned there. See your comment here. It will pin the comment at the bottom.
It's like to force us to see it.
So if Mike really wants to know about those 4 quantity DDHs, he can post it with stars.
Oh, I see. All right. There you go. I understand.
Don't do it, Mike.
I can imagine if you had like some comment section that was getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments, just people blasting it.
Right.
That could be a useful tool if you're trying to get noticed, I guess. But we're a little more intimate with our listeners.
Yes, don't pay. Don't pay. Please.
Yeah, don't pay.
Please don't pay. I mean, if you're going to pay, just send $3 to Justin or something.
Buy a t-shirt.
Some way. Or buy a t-shirt, something like that. Yeah.
Or a mug or a scooter. They have scooters these days, right?
I wanted the Brewing Network or Brew Strong banana hammock. Where I kept checking the website and nothing ever came up.
There has to be a website that can make those.
All right.
With the fist, right. All
right. Come on. Spencer asks, Age Mel and whoever is on as well.
Thank you, Spencer.
You guys are whoever.
I'm good with that.
I listened to and this is from August 23rd of this year. I listened to all the Brew Strong podcasts, and I can't believe how much I have learned. My question is about harvesting and reusing yeast. I use a converted keg to ferment with a floated 2.0 dip tube. I pull about 800 mil off at 48 hours post-pitch into a sanitized mason jar. I place the lid on, but don't screw it down, and I sit it next to the keg in the fermentation fridge, allow it to ferment out. My question is, does it matter what kind of beer I am harvesting from and or using the yeast to make? I appreciate your time and look forward to your timely answer.
So I wanted to throw some information. I don't know if you guys looked up what a flow tilt was, but
I
it's
did
one
too.
of those, the floating dip tube kind of design where it's pulling from the top.
Right. It's got a screen that floats, and the idea behind it, I guess, is even with hops in there, you can go ahead and start pouring your beer and not worry about it. But I'm guessing yeast goes through, and at that point in fermentation, there shouldn't be any flocculation.
Yeah, if you're top cropping or something, right? I mean, I have a couple things similar to that I can put if I want to dry hop in a keg.
This looks like it floats pretty low in the beer. I don't know.
What I saw, there's like
what's a floated top. Sorry, Mike, have you seen something?
It looked like it was kind of that where instead of having like a bobber with the hanging, kind of like the kegland design, it's like a float with a screen, and then the tube is hooked to the screen. And you're still underneath the water surface level, so you're not pulling any floaters. But I thought reading that question was really an interesting way to top crop,
right? To
like basically draw it right off with a floating dip tube was pretty neat. But
it's not
his question.
It can't be drawn off the surface though. Top cropping, you really got to draw off of the yeast that have climbed onto the surface of the liquid.
The corrosion.
This is drawn from beneath.
This is not corrosion. Yeah. So, but his question is, does it matter what style, what beer, what yeast, what etc.?
No. I mean, does it matter if you were to really just analyze it to death? Perhaps. But one thing that I found out, and that my good buddy Mitch Steele, when he was at Stone Brewing, he, we both kind of said the same thing, is that really the best yeast is the freshest yeast.
Yeah, so I didn't read it that way.
They used to try and harvest their yeast off of the lower gravity, less hopped beers, and what they were selling a lot of was their Stone IPA or Pale Ale. I can't remember which one it was. Probably Stone IPA. That's the beer that they had fresh all the time. And they figured out that it was really better to just harvest that yeast and use that yeast versus the beers that were less frequently brewed. What you want is the freshest yeast. That's always going to have the best viability. It's always going to be, the best yeast to use. So I don't think it matters that much. If you're doing something that's really dark or super high gravity, if it's really dark, then maybe rinse the yeast, with some sterile water, not wash. Listen to the previous episode. But just give it a good rinse, and then dark doesn't matter. If it's a super high gravity beer, that might concern me a bit much. Anything past, once you start to go past 10%, then it could be an issue where the yeast have been suffering. So
my question would be too, is what about the difference between like a lager and an ale, where
that's how I read it.
You have bottom fermenting versus top fermenting. Like, are you trying to select for the more bottom with a lager, where it sounds like he pulls from the top every time? I mean, he's not technically corrosioning, but he is pulling from the top, and so you'd only
right.
They all ferment.
But if you look at it, it's two separate questions. The way Jamil answered it is, if you're looking at 001 and it's an IPA or a pale or a double, blah blah blah, it's still 001. Not a big deal. the way I read it is exactly how you read it, Michael. And that's why I was like, oh, wait a second. The only comment I'll add is if you're really talking about the same yeast, the same intention on a repitch, and you want to go from a double to an IPA, not a big deal. I have found that certain hops impart such a strong flavor in the yeast. I don't care if you rinse it, you're going to taste those hops on a repitch. It's been, I would say, impressive, but it's usually the hops I don't know the flavor of. So it's been unimpressive. But no, I agree with you, Mike, and that's how I read it. Please, I don't think I'll let you finish your statement on you're not going to pull 001 and repitch it in the lager. That, or I'm not gonna select at the top of the fermenter for something that I want to have good. I don't know. And then Jamil made a good point that during fermentation, like in that 48-hour range, you're getting really great mixing, yeah. So you're probably not going to be in trouble. I guess I was just trying to follow up and ask, see what you guys thought. But yeah, and I would say, going style to style, if you harvest the yeast, I always say try to harvest the yeast you want to use for the same style. That way you don't end up with a super hoppy harvest, and then you throw it into something you want to be very delicate and light. And so like that's cream mill after double IPA might be a problem. Yeah, or going from a really high gravity down to a really low gravity. I've heard that you can step up, but stepping back down can be. Well, that's where Jamil was pointing out about what I think Greg Cook is that the right gentleman, Jamil at Stone. He pointed out that they would take their IPA repitched in their pail because the IPA was always the freshest yeast. Yes. And it was 10, 15 years ago. I mean, only Blickman knows, but they covered that.
All right. Merlinus, he's I think I met this guy in San Diego at the conference. He says, question for you guys about water modification. Do you think it is better to modify water according to the pros and cons of the style, maximizing the good qualities and minimizing the bad, or to generally just match the water in a geographical area where the style originated? Or maybe just stick to the bare bones modification you described earlier, which is sufficient but maybe not better? Or, hey, let's see here. Stupid question. Wait. That's on yeast. All right. No, it's a good question. I think that's what he said. Sorry. You bastard. No, it's a good question. The thing I've always hated is people are going I'm going to, use Burton water. And, I'm using water from Burton-on-Trent to make my IPA. And they make the most horrific IPAs. I mean,
you don't like 600 to 1 ratios?
Undrinkable. And, what you find out when you're in breweries in Burton-on-Trent is that they use RO water and then they adjust it back because the water's so terrible. And so a lot of times the geographical area is not the way to go. You don't want to do that. You would be best if you are already comfortable with water. You've got all your other aspects of brewing dialed in, and you really want to get a little more into the seasoning, as Michael was saying, of water. Well, then you would do it according to the style. Adjust to the style, and that's going to be your best bet versus geographic or basic. I'd say 100%, with the only exception would be if you're super trying to do some historical recipe you found from some region that you're trying to nail. It should have tasted the way it tasted 100 years ago, but that goes back to Jamil. I don't know. That goes back to what I don't know why you would do that. So it doesn't taste good. But a lot of times those brewers were just like, man, this water sucks. And so they would do things to fix the water. What was it, Jamil? They've told us that, way back when the river was at this level and now the river's at that level. Right. So the water they're pulling today, you don't know what the ppm, this, that, and the other was 100 years ago. We're all assuming. And sometimes they would brew. They would brew when it rained a lot, or they'd brew, certain times of the year. Like I was brewing in Elk Grove. It's like, well, when the water's better, that's when I'm going to brew. right? So they would brew a bunch. They would put in lagering caves, things like that. That's why a lot of that happened.
If I waited for the water to be good here, my wife would love me more because it won't be good here.
Hey, Travis, have you ever thought about doing water dilution?
I did that earlier on before I went to RO. Yeah, I stepped it. I made beer that Jamil wouldn't spit out too fast, and then I made a beer that Jamil would just spit out immediately. And that's the water I started correcting, and I started correcting that with dilution, because dilution is a solution to pollution or hard water. But it was honestly, when I moved here, it was chloramines, and back in Louisiana, it was chlorines, and the carbon filter helped. And Jamil would act like he drank my beer then, but when I came here and all my IPAs got crazy bitter, I'm like, Jamil, what's the problem? And he says, the problem's the beer sucks. Like, okay, noted. No, he told me it's your water. And so I started acidifying, filtering differently, diluting, etc. Yeah, I don't recommend being on an RO. You shouldn't need to be on RO unless you live in Houston. Yeah, sorry.
All right.
You asked.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Shorts. Yeah.
I think. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Just getting back to the question, I think it's pretty settled then that the style is what's most important. And usually what that is,
generally,
like you said, with seasoning, you're pushing the certain flavors of that style in the direction of what you as the brewer are trying to emphasize. Yes. So like if you're looking for something that you want to emphasize hoppiness, you want to emphasize bitter biteness, sulfates are where you're going. Whereas like a region, like you said, they were almost trying to either mask their water with the style, or they were, complaining the whole time, or they were thanking the water god for giving them,
or they were adding
water.
Salt, or they were salad, or a lot of stuff. Yeah,
I think that has been shown. Like even very early on, brewers noticed that when they did make adjustments with salt, whether it be table salt, other salts, they could improve the flavor profiles. So doing a water profile by region is almost counterproductive.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting guide, but don't use it as a religion. Merlinus came up with a follow-up question. He said, on the yeast harvesting topic for you folks, how horrible is it to rinse yeast that had dry hops if you are just making the same beer with the same hops? Yeah, there's no worry there. I would, considering the amount of yeast that you put in versus, a batch of beer, even if it was different hops, or, going from a hoppy beer to an unhoppy beer, it's generally not a problem. If you rinse with sterile water and you just shake it up and get rid of the trub and all that, you'd be hard pressed to really find a problem with, the various hops in there. So I don't think it would be a problem.
Yeah, I've only encountered 2 hops that have carried across yeast. One was Lotus and one was Azaka. And those were extremely heavily dry hop beers, and they carried. And I was speechless, not expecting that flavor to carry across the yeast. And I do a rinse, not a heavy rinse, not a multiple rinse. Jamil recommends, multiple rinse is not a bad idea. I try to pull from the core of my yeast, but I mean, a decade, I've only had 2 hops ever carry across the yeast.
Now,
so I think they share a compound, honestly, Lotus and Azaka, and whatever that compound is, maybe it's a very low ppm threshold flavor. I don't know.
My only follow up would be, and I've heard this a couple times, and I've never really experienced it because I'm a pretty religious cold dry hopper. But I've heard that if you have heavily dry hop beers during fermentation, you got a lot of hops, you can actually end up with a yeast that has low vitality, or it can have attenuation problems just because of the amount of like alpha acids and kind of that hop induced kind of antiseptic properties that make it hard for protozoa bacteria to replicate and grow. So I don't know if that was also something to consider when you're.
Yeah, high hops can affect yeast viability. Sure. Yeah. And in commercial brewing, the goal is always to drop your yeast first and then dry hop. And, the reason was because, you didn't want those hop matter in your yeast pitch. So, makes a difference. Definitely makes a difference. Brandon was asking, I was listening to your recent Q&A episode where there was a question about purging oxygen from kegs. Why not just hook up the blow-off tube into the corny, bev out, quick disconnect, and allow all the CO2 from the fermentation to flow through the keg? It's one of the things that I've always said in the commercial breweries that you could take one fermenter, take the blow off, and blow it through another fermenter to purge. When you clean fermenters, you have to get rid of the CO2 if you're going to use caustic. Otherwise, you'll implode the keg, the fermenter. So you vent all the CO2, and then you clean with caustic. Once you've done that, you want to. If the only reason you need to purge the fermenter is if you're going to use it for a bright tank or something like that. If you're going to ferment in it, then it doesn't matter. So I guess Brandon's suggesting it's like, so I've got my fermenter hooked up. When it's done fermenting, I'm going to transfer it to my corny keg and, put my beer in there. It should work. The only issue with it is going to be, it's not really going to be an issue for homebrewing if that's what you're doing. It's like, let's say I have a glass carboy and I'm fermenting in it, and then I take a tube and I off gassing, I put into my keg and out through the open port on the keg. The reasons you often won't do it commercially is because the gases that are coming off of the fermentation aren't just CO2. There's other stuff in there. There's diacetyl, there's DMS, there's, a lot of other compounds. There's hop compounds. If it's hoppy beer, there's all sorts of other stuff that's in there. And if you're going to put another beer in there, if you're going to transfer from another fermenter into that bright that you've purged using this method, it could pick up some of those compounds. So that's why you a lot of times won't do it commercially. But if you're homebrewing and the very beer that you're using to purge this keg is the beer that's going into that keg, I think it's actually a pretty good idea. I think, it may be more trouble than it's worth. And the other issue is, if your blow off tube should get yeast or something like that in it, that's a problem, right? You really don't want to get that in there. So other than that, I think it's pretty good. Personally, I think the 5 cents worth of CO2 it took me to do it, or 10 cents for the CO2. I'd rather just do that.
Well, so Jamil, I know you're not as concerned about O2 later in fermentation because we don't really remove all the yeast, etc. So I don't disagree with anything you said. There are people out there that want zero O2 in there. And for them, I would say you're not going to get to zero.
Very difficult to get to zero.
Unless maybe you fill it with somehow an O2-free liquid, which, by the way, your liquid is not O2-free, right, unless you just finished boiling it. So you would want to push an O2-free liquid out with that CO2, and then you would have an O2-free canister-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't disagree with anything you said. That's fine. That's going to make great beer. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and all I'd say is the only reason I don't do that is because when I do a purge and I do a sanitation purge, and then I also do a leak down test. So I actually will pressurize the keg and then I store it. So then whenever I go to grab it, I can check it to make sure it's not leaking.
Yeah. It's already done. It's already purged. It's already sealed. In your case, my case typically too. My last step is forcing sanitizer out with CO2. I didn't used to do it that way, but that's what it is. My sanitizer has O2 in it, I promise you, because it's not been boiled.
Mhm.
But it's really low ppm O2. And there's no way in heck that the beer coming out of my fermenter into my corny keg is O2 free, is yeast free.
Mhm.
So I have yeast that's going to pull any remaining O2 out of it,
There you go.
for better or for worse.
All right, Mark. He says, hoping I can reach Jamil here. Couldn't find any better way to contact him other than Twitter. Please pass this along if possible. If not, let me know. Thank you. I'll tell you. It's jzanishev@gmail.com, and you can just email me. That's fine. I don't hide it. It's, he says, hi, I don't think we've ever met, but I did meet your wife a couple years ago at the Legends of Beer Fest here in Reno, Sparks technically, and stopped by Heretic a few times over the years. I just want to reach out about Gale's Prize Old Ale. I read your BYO article, Brew Your Own magazine. I wrote an article for there about Gale's Prize Old Ale. Great experience going to Brew and brewing Gale's Prize Old Ale. And was just totally fascinated and captivated by the history, and I knew I had to try this beer. After a little searching, I was thrilled to find some old bottles, nearly early 2000s, for sale. Cheap too, from Holiday Wine. So that'll give you a little hint as to what's going on. Holiday Wine Cellar in Escondido. After jumping through some hoops to get my hands on it, no shipping to Nevada, but California is close, so I can ship there and go get it. I secured my bottles. I knew bottles this old were a risk, not knowing how they'd been stored or handled for the last 2 decades. I finally opened a couple, and sadly, they were no good. Corks rotten beyond belief. No carbonation. Very vinegary and unpleasant. I'm very sorry I can't experience it the way it was meant to be enjoyed. Would you think there is any chance the contents are useful in terms of salvaging any of the microbes for brewing? Yes, I do. I don't know that I really want to try. Any thoughts? If you want them, I'll send bottles. Best, Mark in Reno. You know Mark?
I have not met him. At least if I have, I must have had too many delicious beers.
Just enough. Not too many.
I've been to that. I actually remember that Legends of Beer at Sparks, where your wife and she was there at the tent with all my Brew Chatter bros. That was a good time.
Hey, I've been there a few times. Now, could it be that Josh and RJ had me somewhere else wandering around drinking?
No, I remember that one. You had something going on, and so Josh was manning the tent, and I remember he was handing out your was it called like amnesia juice or something?
Yes,
I can't remember.
Name, right?
That was a lot.
14, 16%?
Yeah, that was
I can't remember.
That was a big old boy, wasn't he?
Oh, I had fun commercially brewing. Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you, is that the one we tried at when Brew Chatter closed? We you brought over some really cool.
Brought a bottle of Gales, I think.
Yeah, that was really cool. That was an experience for sure.
So, Mark, yeah, I think some of those earlier Gales, I mean, they all have bacteria in them, but I think that it is worth, plating out or regrowing. I would plate it out. For me, I would plate it out. I'd pick the yeast colonies, grow those up, get those healthy, and then I would do like a pure pitch of those, and then I would just use, once the fermentation was done, I'd give it a drop of the bacteria laden juice.
I was going to say that. Would you want to infect the barrel with the everything?
Yeah.
Plate out the purity, ferment with the purity, throw it in the barrel kind of thing.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
I do like a cask ale. Yeah.
We stopped taking points, damn it. Where'd the points go? What happened to the points?
5 points to Travis. Yes, we really should reinstitute the point system because
I love I love the point system. Mike kicks my ass every time. That's fine.
Yeah, right. You kick my ass every time. That's why you want the points back.
No, it's all Jamil wants to piss off whoever he feels like pissing off on who gets points.
I think that's kind of puppet master kind of status there. Like.
That's true. Have any of you ever seen Taskmaster from the UK?
I think you told us about this.
Yes. Oh, it's one of my favorite shows of all time, where they do these, meaningless, stupid tasks that are very difficult, and then the Taskmaster awards points, and sometimes just based on how he's feeling. So
arbitrarily,
yes, a little bit of.
You shall have 2 points for kissing my ass.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I need more ass kissing, and you get more points.
I maybe I don't speak for Mike, and I'm not going to say the word I want to say, but F that.
All right. Well, on that note, let's take another break. We will be back right after this.
Back to the two guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. Hey, Alex. Good to see you there in the chat, in the comments. Let's see here. This is a long one. Chris, back in 20-something. That's one of the older ones. We're going to get to every question that's ever been mailed in. Chris he says, hi guys from Hobart, Tasmania. I listened to your latest show about bottle conditioning and older shows about carbonation. I don't think I've heard you talk about carbonating with space, guile,
pizza.
or hear you covering krausening techniques. John, you briefly mentioned krausening and how to brew as an advanced technique and how it can treat oxidation problems in finished beer, but the technique is not covered. What are some of its other benefits? Does it follow that krausening will also delay long-term spoilage issues or at least preserve freshness longer? Is it like decoction mashing and one of those questionable traditions that we brewers can't let go? Or is there something more to these techniques? Or do you see any advantages or disadvantages to using these techniques over more commonplace natural carbonation methods? I started carbonating with krausening early on in my brewing for some reason, and always prefer the results I get from using this over simple sugars. I find that beers carbonated with simple sugar always taste a little rough until they have conditioned for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Beers carbonated with krausening taste great to me as soon as they are carbonated after 1 week. To a brewer who brews strictly to replace his and his friends' consumption of commercial beer, this is important. Is there a reasonable explanation for this, or do I have just have a vivid imagination? I mean, it's hopped wort we're adding back into the beer. It's not just a sugar solution. JC, surely you have an opinion on this. Oh, yeah, I do. There is not a lot of practical info on this stuff about. I'd love for you guys to expand on it at some point. Also, be nice to Justin. He's my favorite. Oh, so Chris is limited mental vacuity here. Yeah.
Did he lose points
Soft
for that
spot
one?
for Justin.
He lost points.
I'm sure he did.
Anyway, next time you guys come to Australia, bypass Melbourne, Sydney, whatever, and visit Tassie. We have Australia's oldest brewery. We grow all of these great Australian hops you guys love. Tassie fucking devils, and our craft beers are not boring like mainland beers. Lots of love, Chris. Oh, thank you, Chris.
Can I just say I've played a lot of rugby, and as I read this, it was a great read. It just because I played with a lot of Australian guys, and then just Tassie fucking devils, just like this. It was great.
I love the Australians.
Yeah.
What a wonderful country. What a wonderful bunch of people.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot to break apart there.
You didn't limit him to one question, evidently.
That was like 10.
You're right.
It's one question with a lot of thoughts thrown in.
Was
So
it an essay question?
I think is he crazy that simple sugar is taking 3 to 4 weeks and this krausening method is taking 1 week and tastes better?
To smooth out. Yeah. I would expect it to smooth out for flavor wise, not for carbonation wise. I would expect actually using wort over simple sugar would result in a better flavor.
Yeah, mate. I mean, I'd say all you got to do is imagine using something not natural in something natural. You're going to get a more natural flavor, if I'm not mistaken. And that's my best Australian accent for you. And the answer granted.
That is a pretty...
That's a lot of points. That's a lot
you
of
get
points
25
right
points per...
I don't screw around too much with bottle conditioning, if you will. And I imagine, yes, Spitze, as the Germans would put it, would be a much more quickly tasty way to do it. Granted, you need to account for non-fermentables and other sugars and try to account for that.
So there is a difference in fermentation depending on the sugar you use for carbonation. It's minor, but it might be in a triangle test. You could pick out people say they can get turbinado versus like a cane sugar or a beet sugar. I don't doubt it. I mean,
does it matter by temperature, Jamil? I mean, like everybody, when I started homebrewing, I'm homebrewing in the South.
Yeah.
So if I'm adding some wort at 72, or if I'm adding some sucrose at 72, is that going to be a stronger difference in flavor?
I would not tell somebody that they could not detect it. I'm just going to say it's going to be fairly small. It's going to be minor, but if you taste it, you taste it. And so I would stick with what you think is better or what you feel is better. I would say that there would be a difference between the yeast carryover in a fermented beer versus hitting it with a fresh krausen from another beer, right? If you're brewing the exact same beer and you've got it, down, great. But if you're taking, krausen from some different beer that you're brewing, I imagine that could taste different because, it's a different wort. It's a different beer. But let's say he's making exactly the same beer every time. I think the fact that you're taking fresh active wort and fresh active yeast may actually attenuate it a little bit more than just adding some sugar and whatever yeast that have flocculated out or remained in.
Right. And fresh yeast versus if you waiting for the old yeast to kick up on simple sugar.
Yeah. Because
krausen is wort plus yeast, not just wort, whereas sugar. So Mike, please, I have special requests. The accent, please.
All right. I don't want to offend my Australian friends.
You already
really joking. I know.
It was great. Really I loved it.
It's actually one of the better Australian accents I've heard.
Yeah. All right. I can
even
try
from all my Australian
all
friends.
right, Mike. You give it another shot. So, krausening, where you're using different beers, I could see. Honestly, let's just cut to shit. I don't think you're going to get much flavor difference. This is all kind of willy magic. Do triangle tests. I guarantee you fail every time. Just bottle condition it and drink it. You already said your mates and you are trying to make this beer to supplement your commercial beer buying. Have a crack. Just have fun. Brew beer.
There you go.
Good job, man. Come on. 25 more points, Jamil.
Okay. I give you another 15.
See how he steps up when the competition comes in? This is outstanding.
Yeah. I didn't do it. All of a sudden. You're the one telling him to give me points. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, because it was great. It was great, man. I loved it. Come on.
But my real point is, I think if you do heads up triangle test, same beer, Kreuzening versus pizza versus simple sugar, you're going to not be able to tell the difference. It's not going to happen.
Jamil said. I'm curious about it. But to my point,
all right.
When I used to bottle condition, my beer was crap. Was it the bottle conditioner? Was it me? It was probably me. But anyway, I'd be curious.
You give me the triangle test, I will prove you wrong.
Trip to Australia. Let's go.
Tassie,
let's all go.
I can go down to a couple of IBU. They say 5 IBU for no. You can detect 1, 2 IBU.
See, really that's where nobody fucks with the Jamil.
That's right.
But I would say if this gentleman does a triangle test with his friends drinking beer so they don't buy commercial beer,
I gotta agree with you there. Yeah. It's you'll find that the difference is so minor that I'm not saying somebody can't detect it. I'm just saying I don't think it matters that much,
right?
And that you should do what's easier for you. Because apparently you and your buddies are a bunch of drunks. They're Australian.
No, Aussies getting strike.
You have to give some points back to Jamil for that one. I don't have any points to give him.
So, and you just want to drink a lot of beer. So whatever will produce more beer would be the better solution.
True story.
There you go.
More alcohol.
Last thing before I go, actually, when I was in the army, I actually did a training operation with the Australian First Royal Australian Regiment, and those boys could put them down. Did a little party afterwards. It was a great time.
They legally start training earlier than we do. Like they can start drinking at 16 legally, right? So
I don't know. These boys look like they were all SF. I mean, they're a tiny little army, and they were all jacked and just looking like beefcakes, and we were all kind of skinny, scrawny, running around.
So they worked
20 years
the weights
old
and the beer before we can work the weights for the beer.
Yeah, and then they put them down and put us all under the table. It was great.
Yeah, very nice.
Granted, I was 20, and we were in Germany, so that was still legal, but it was hilarious.
Wonderful people out there.
They're great. They're
kind and generous and funny, and they live life to the fullest. Just a wonderful place. If you ever get a chance to go to Australia,
it's on my bucket list.
Please
I have to go.
It is amazing, and the people are just, just some of the. I love Australian humor.
I'd love to go.
Australian movies too, because they get me. I don't know.
What do you think about those Australian sparkling lagers? Is that a sparkling ale?
Sparkling ale.
Oh yeah, the Coopers.
That's the whole show. You had Peter on for that show.
Go back like 12 years and listen to the show we did on.
Right. I think you had Peter on for that show.
Well, then, that may have been. Yeah, I don't know if that was Brew Strong or that was the Jamil show or.
Can you brew it?
Can you brew one or the other?
I think it was Brew Strong. You guys were talking about single vessel like brewing a bag, and that was, as far as I understand, was
more of an kilo.
What? Yeah.
Getting a kilo. Right.
Before we leave, Christian comes with a good point, which I agree with. Is I think the Kreuzening method would carbonate faster because its active turns minute amounts of yeast and solution out to reproduce that. That would be felt on a commercial level of brewery trying to turn and burn soluble product as fast as possible. Yeah.
Well, Kreuzening on a commercial level is the next pitch.
You're taking yeast and completely active, it's ready. It's rocking and rolling.
It's taking beer from an active ferment and just transferring some to a beer.
Next words.
Yeah.
No, to condition. You're throwing it in the finished beer.
Essentially, just to the reason it's done is just to provide enough sugars for carbonation. Right. You already have yeast in your beer.
But even their yeast pitch is a top crop pitch, right?
Yeah, but
in England, they're pulling yeast off the top pitch on the next words. So they pull a little bit more to finish it. But I mean, the whole thing is take yeast that's active and repitch. not pitch out. I mean, in England, they don't pull from a cone. Well, they might today, but traditionally they didn't pull from a cone.
It's to carbonate the beer.
Yeah, we're talking finished beer. You're taking beer from another batch that's at high Kreuzen.
Yes.
Right. Well, that's Kreuzen. But I mean, but even when we visit Sean Knight, and he's fermenting this beer, and his beer has a foot of Kreuzen on it with a semi-closed top, and there's brand new wort. He's pulling his yeast off the top of this beer. He's pulling Kreuzen from one beer to start fermentation, not just finish fermentation.
Right.
I mean, that's top cropping for just
top cropping, not Kreuzening.
Yeast sake, yeah. Kreuzening takes beer, active beer,
and I would actually
beer,
and I would think
because it's got the sugars in.
I would think Kreuzening in terms of nailing the carbonation rate. So think about what beer style you're doing, what kind of volumes you need to get to take much
harder.
Yeah, you're going to have to do that a lot to really.
It's
bracket in that
commercial brewery stuff where you're brewing the same beer over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I think at Heretic with certain beers, I could have done that, but I think, it's just not worth going down that road as a home brewer. I would just stick with, being able to dial in my carbonation.
Some of these beers in Germany and England, they've been brewing for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I would think that's where you've got, especially with Reinheitsgebot, and you have to do something like that. You can spend 100 years filling that in.
Mm-hmm. So, there you go. Yeah. When you're brewing just one beer. All right. Another great show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to all our fine sponsors. Thank you to Michael and Travis for being here. And, even though Travis just keeps losing on points, eventually he'll be able to make it.
I think somebody has to come in third.
I think somebody needs to comment and do a record. Like, I think I'm actually still losing record here. I think what happens is I get blowout wins, but I don't win I don't win
the dailies. The dailies. The grind.
You win the tight games. You grind them out.
I'm good with the tight ones. Mike's good with the blowouts.
Somebody's good with tight. Somebody's good with blow. Yes.
Somebody likes blowing stuff. Somebody likes being tight. I don't know.
It sounds like the Brewing Network has never skipped a beat. And if you enjoy this show, again, make sure you take care of all our sponsors, especially Blickman Engineering. Please send an email to feedback@blickmanengineering.com and tell John Blickman that you appreciate that he supports this show. If you don't, chances are the show won't exist in the future. I'm just saying, he's a businessman. Good friend, but it's the least you can do. Anyways, just keep on brewing and brew strong, everybody.
Strong.
Keep on brewing strong.